Let's start now. Level 14, Near Zero Gravity. Our journey begins in the supreme void, far from everything we know. In deep space, within the vast abysses between galaxies, gravity reaches its lowest possible level in the universe. Here you are millions of light years away from any star, planet, or black hole. The gravitational pull of all the masses in the universe reaches you only as a faint, almost undetectable echo. This is what we call near-zero gravity. In this desolate state, the fabric of space-time is practically flat, devoid of the dramatic curvatures caused by matter. There is nothing to pull you, nothing to give you a direction of up or down, and no frame of reference for movement. If you dropped a tool in this void, it would remain in exactly the same position relative to you for eternal eras, unless the minimal pressure of an errant photon pushed it millimetrically. It is absolute gravitational isolation where the expansion of the universe itself begins to overcome the ability of matter to stay together. It is the end of the ladder, where the force that creates suns and devours galaxies finally dissipates into the infinite vastness. It is the primordial void, the dark stage where gravity, the great architect of the cosmos, finally rests its hands, leaving only silence and absolute nothingness. Level 13, Microgravity. We move up to the fascinating and surreal state of eternal freefall, where gravity seems to have been switched off, yet it is still very much present. On the International Space Station, Earth's gravity is still very real. About 90% of the force we feel down here still acts up there. However, because the station travels laterally at a staggering speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour, it falls around the curvature of the Earth at the same rate the Earth curves away from it. The practical result is microgravity, where weight disappears. In this environment, liquids do not flow but mold themselves into perfect floating spheres. Fire flames do not rise but become stable, blue globes. The human body loses its sense of orientation as the vestibular system in the inner ear stops working without the pull of weight. Blood and body fluids move toward the torso and head, creating a constant feeling of congestion and making the face look puffier. It is a state of total physical freedom, but one that demands a high price. Without the constant load of gravity, the body starts discarding bone calcium and muscle fibers as if they were unnecessary. It is gravity in a perfect dynamic balance, an orbital dance where speed and fall cancel each other out to create the illusion of the void. Level 12. Gravity of asteroids. Asteroids are the building blocks left over from the dawn of the solar system, and their gravity is a force of extreme subtleties. On small, porous asteroids like Bennu or Ryugu, gravity is so incredibly low that the ground does not behave like something solid under your feet. If you tried to walk, the surface might behave like a liquid or a granular fluid, as the dust grains and rocks are not pressed against each other with enough force to create friction. Here, gravity is not measured in meters per second, but in microfractions of a g. You do not walk on an asteroid. You anchor yourself to it with grapples or thrusters. The gravitational influence of these objects is so delicate that they can barely keep debris in stable orbit. However, over timescales of millions of years, this minimal and almost imperceptible gravity is what allows these objects to clump together, grow, and eventually form the embryos of future planets. It is gravity in its most primordial and patient state, the silent building force that starts with simple dust grains mutually attracting in the absolute dark of space. It is an attraction you don't feel in your muscles, yet it is the fundamental base of all the cosmic architecture we see today. Level 11, Gravity of Comets. Comets are the icy nomads of the solar system, and their gravity is a force so fragile it is almost non-existent, yet already capable of shaping colossal tails. When the historic Rosetta probe attempted to land on Comet 67P, it could not simply rely on weight. It had to fire harpoons and use engines to secure itself. Otherwise, it would have bounced back into the vacuum like a rubber ball. The gravity on an average comet is thousands of times lower than Earth's. If you were standing on its icy surface, you could throw a small stone and watch in wonder as it entered orbit around the comet itself, or even around you. This almost total absence of pull means the comet cannot hold on to its own gases and vapors when heated by the sun, creating those majestic tails of dust and gas that stretch for millions of kilometers across the sky. It is a tenuous and ghostly existence where gravity is so subtle that even the slight pressure of sunlight can influence the trajectory of particles on its surface. There is no atmospheric pressure, no sensation of weight on your feet, just the profound silence of a dirty ice rock wandering lonely through the immense vacuum. It is the critical threshold between being a solid object and being just a cloud of vaguely connected debris. Level 10. Gravity of small moons. As we reach the small irregular moons such as Deimos or Phobos orbiting Mars, gravity becomes almost an abstract and optional concept, yet dangerously present. In these tiny rocky worlds, the attraction is so low that escape velocity is comparable to the speed of a fast run or a well-executed baseball throw. If you took a more vigorous leap, you would run the real risk of never returning to the ground, entering an independent orbit, or losing yourself forever in the vacuum of space. The shape of these moons is not perfectly spherical, but irregular and full of bulges, resembling large space potatoes, because their own internal gravity is not strong enough to overcome the rigidity of the rocks and mold them into perfect spheres. Walking on these surfaces would require the use of hooks or magnets, as any false step could launch you away. Dust kicked up by a simple touch can float for hours before being pulled back in a lethargic manner. It is contact-only gravity, where you feel more like an astronaut floating next to a mountain than someone standing on a solid world. It is a strange and disorienting environment where the total mass of the celestial body is insufficient to create a clear sense of direction. Level 9. Weak planetary gravity. Imagine walking on the reddish plains of Mars, where you weigh only 38% of what you weigh on Earth, or in the craters of the Moon, where your weight drops to a mere 16%. Here, gravity stops being a constant pressure and becomes a gentle and permissive force, yet a transformative one. You could leap over high obstacles with minimal effort and carry loads that would be impossible to lift on your home planet. However, this apparent lightness hides deep biological and geological dangers. Mars's gravity is too weak to have maintained a strong magnetic field or a thick atmosphere over eons, resulting in a desert-like, freezing world bombarded by radiation. On the Moon, gravity is so low that it cannot retain any atmosphere at all, leaving the surface in a perpetual vacuum. For the human body, life under weak gravity is an adaptation challenge. Without the resistance of weight, your bones begin to lose calcium and your muscles atrophy quickly. It is a world of choreographed movements, slow-motion leaps, and dust that takes minutes to settle after an impact. It is the frontier where mass stops being a tyrant and becomes a suggestion, allowing a physical freedom that, ironically, weakens the vital structure of life. Level 8. Moderate planetary gravity. This is the level you call normality, the fundamental base of all your sensory experience and the point of perfect balance. Earth's gravity is the ideal spot for the development and maintenance of complex life as we know it. It is strong enough to hold a dense atmosphere, protecting us from cosmic radiation and keeping water vapor near the surface, yet weak enough to allow biological beings to move, grow, and fly. At sea level, you experience a constant acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared, an invisible force that shapes the density of your bones, the strength of your muscles, and even the structure of your circulatory system. It is this moderate force that keeps oceans pinned to their beds, the Moon in its rhythmic orbit, and communication satellites in their precise positions. Without Earth's gravity, the air you breathe would instantly dissipate into space and life would be impossible. Gravity here is our constant anchor, the invisible hand that connects us to the ground and defines what we understand as up and down. Even as a moderate force, it requires a colossal effort to overcome, as seen in every rocket launch that burns tons of fuel. It is the gold standard by which we measure the habitability of the universe. Level 7. Strong planetary gravity. The tension begins to rise drastically as we arrive at Jupiter, the undisputed sovereign of the planets. This gas giant possesses gravity so massive that it acts as both the shield and the executioner of the solar system. Its attraction is so powerful that it acts as a cosmic vacuum cleaner, capturing wandering comets that might otherwise collide with Earth. However, this same force exerts brutal pressure on its moons, such as Io, stretching and squeezing them until their cores melt and create active sulfur volcanoes. If there were a solid surface on Jupiter, where you could attempt to land, you would immediately feel more than 2.5 times your earthly weight. Every simple movement would be a Herculean and painful effort. Your heart would have to pump blood with tremendous force, and your lungs would struggle to inflate against the atmospheric and gravitational pressure. Jupiter is not just a planet. It is almost a miniature solar system, governing an army of moons with a gravitational iron fist. This immense gravity is what keeps hydrogen compressed to such an extent that it becomes metallic in its depths. It is gravity at its maximum planetary scale, where gaseous mass becomes a relentless geological force shaping everything around it. Level 6. Stellar gravity. We now enter the realm of the luminous giants that sustain life, where gravity becomes the driving force of nuclear fusion. The Sun's gravity is the master force that holds our entire solar system together, from Mercury to the reaches of the Oort cloud. On the Sun's visible surface, gravity is 28 times stronger than on Earth. If you could walk there and weighed 80 kilograms here, you would feel the crushing weight of over 2 tons on your shoulders. It is this colossal gravity that generates the pressure and temperature necessary in the solar core to fuse hydrogen atoms into helium, a process that releases the light and heat that sustain life. Without this immense gravitational force, the Sun would dissipate into the vacuum. Without the counterweight of fusion energy, it would collapse upon itself. It is a perfect, precarious, and extremely violent balance. Stellar gravity curves the space around it enough that we can observe the deflection of light from distant stars, proving that mass governs the geometry of the cosmos. It is a sovereign force that dictates the rhythm of orbits and the fate of every planet. The Sun is a sphere of boiling plasma in a constant struggle against its own mass, an eternal gravitational war. Level 5. Gravity of white dwarfs. From here on, gravity stops being just strong and starts becoming overwhelming. A white dwarf is what remains of a star like the Sun after its death. It is the size of the Earth, but retains the mass of a full star. Gravity on its surface is about 100,000 times greater than on Earth. If you tried to step onto this surface, your entire body would be transformed into a thin layer of atomized organic matter in a fraction of a second. Here, internal pressure is sustained not by fusion, but by electron degeneracy pressure, a quantum force that fights against the unbearable weight of the dead star. It is a persistent gravity that keeps this stellar corpse glowing for billions of years. Every cubic centimeter of this matter contains tons of compacted mass. It is a force that pulls with such intensity that time passes slightly slower there than in the empty space around it. It is the final destination for the majority of stars, a dense remnant serving as a silent witness to gravity's power to crush the fundamental structure of atoms. It is a cold, dense, and heavy glow that makes rocky planets seem like smoke before they are disintegrated. Level 4. Gravity of neutron stars. Physical panic becomes reality as we encounter the neutron star. Imagine the mass of 2 suns compressed into the size of a small city. The gravity on the surface of this star is so massive that it defies any comparison. A single teaspoon of its material would weigh as much as Mount Everest. If you fell from a height of just 1 meter onto the surface of this star, you would hit the ground at a speed of millions of kilometers per hour due to the gravitational acceleration of trillions of Gs. Gravity here is so strong that the mountains on its surface cannot be more than a few millimeters high. Anything larger would be instantly crushed by its own weight. The gravitational field bends light in such a way that you can see almost the entire surface of the star, including the back, all at once. It is a laboratory of extreme physics, where matter is so compacted that atoms collapse, fusing protons and electrons into a dense sea of neutrons. Gravitational pressure is the only factor preventing this object from becoming a black hole. It is the densest solid object in the universe, where gravity acts as a hydraulic press of divine scale, ready to rupture reality. Level 3. Gravity of black holes. We cross the border into the domain of the true kings of cosmic terror. The attraction of a black hole is absolute and sovereign. Entire stars are captured by this invisible field and shredded in a brutal process called spaghettification, where gravity pulls your feet with much more force than your head, transforming you into a strand of matter. Gravity here is so intense that it dictates the fate of entire galaxies, acting as the central engine of immense systems. Imagine an invisible anchor at the center of a whirlpool. Everything around it is forced to spin at speeds approaching the speed of light to avoid being swallowed. The gravitational field is so deep that it creates lenses in space, distorting and magnifying the image of distant galaxies. It is a gravity that not only attracts but actively shapes the evolution of the visible universe. Billions of tons of gas and debris orbit this center of mass, heating up to millions of degrees and emitting X-rays in a final gasp before the inevitable fall. It is a monster of pure attraction, a force that never rests and consumes entire solar systems without hesitation. It is the sovereign power that bends reality under the weight of its invisible and insatiable mass. Level 2. Extreme gravity. You are now balanced on the edge of the most dangerous cosmic precipice in the universe. The event horizon is the invisible and pitiless frontier where escape velocity exceeds the speed of light. Gravity in this region is so violent and distorted that it bends light rays into perfect circles, creating a photon sphere around you that would allow you to see the back of your own head just by looking forward. Time here behaves like a thick fluid. To an outside observer, if you fell toward this edge, you would appear to freeze in time, growing redder and redder until you vanished. But for you, the outer universe would appear to accelerate in a frenzied flash, with billions of years passing in seconds. The tidal force is so powerful that any solid object is transformed into a stream of incandescent plasma in milliseconds. You are being pulled into a cosmic grinder that distorts physical reality with every millimeter you advance. It is a gravitational war zone where space flows like an unstoppable waterfall toward nothingness. Light trying to escape is pulled back like a prisoner shackled by an omnipotent force. It is the threshold of total annihilation, the final step before the end of everything. Level 1. Gravity in Singularities. Finally, we reach the heart of absolute chaos, where all laws of physics cease to exist. At the center of a black hole, gravity is no longer just a force. It is an incurable rupture in the very structure of the universe. Here, mathematics dies. A singularity is a point of infinite density and zero volume, where the mass of a giant star has been squeezed into a space smaller than a single atom. There is no place or time within the singularity. If you were here, the difference in gravity between your cells would be so vast that you would be stretched infinitely into a point that defies human comprehension. It is the ultimate limit of the cosmos, a system error where space-time curves so much upon itself that it simply closes off from the rest of the universe. Nothing escapes this point, not light, not information, nor causality itself. It is the final destination of matter, the point where the universe says enough. It is absolute silence under a pressure that defies quantum mechanics and general relativity. It is the throne of chaos and the eternal prison of light. What happens inside remains the greatest secret of existence, a hungry abyss that devours tomorrow itself. It is the sovereignty of gravity at its absolute peak, where infinity becomes a crushing and final physical reality. In short, gravity is both the architect and the supreme destroyer of the cosmos. From the absolute void to the infinite collapse of the singularity, we have seen reality mold itself under the weight of mass, where time dilates and the laws of physics cease to exist. We inhabit a rare point of equilibrium in a universe governed by relentless gravitational chaos. The world is full of hidden stories, and here at Paint Facts we reveal the most impressive ones. So subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next fact might just surprise you.